an email here, as you can tell. It is from John. I will not reveal any last names. Possibly you'll understand why when I read this. John says, as I mentioned earlier, because this is the second half of the email, it's rather lengthy. John runs on. As I mentioned earlier, I saw you and Baby Doll at the Spartanburg Auditorium the last time you were here. I've actually been going to wrestling in that building since I was a very young boy. Fell in love with it there. My grandmother was the one who got me into wrestling, as she loved the sport more than anyone I know. 99% of the time, she was such a sweet, innocent, God-fearing, typical Southern grandmother. But not when she watched wrestling, and for sure not when she went to the shows. She changed. She morphed into a crazy, wild, dangerous woman right before my eyes. One of my favorite stories to tell, as terrible as it is, was my grandmother getting kicked out of the auditorium for spitting tobacco on Ric Flair. In parentheses, she dipped snuff. We had seats by the walkway as the wrestlers entered. Flair, heeling it up like only he can, was taunting the audience. She said something to him about cheating Dusty. Flair said, "What are you going to do about it?" And she spit a wad of the nasty stuff right on his chest. We were then asked to leave, as you can imagine. It was around 1984-ish, and I was 5 or 6 at the time. I had no clue how to take this, but I was hooked and have been ever since. Even started to pull for Flair and the other heels just to give her hell. So my question here is, any crazy old Southern women fan stories you can tell? They look so innocent, but can be some of the meanest and sneakier ones in the world. Thanks, and keep up the good work. Well, John,
it wasn't just the South.
It wasn't just, well, it was out west. It was, I have a story from a spot show in Tennessee, but it wasn't an old woman. So I'll leave that one for later on. It was actually a giant farm woman I was managing Ken Wayne and Danny Davis as the Galaxians. And this woman was bigger than all three of us. But I do have a senior citizen story, because we had gone to work for World Class out of Dallas, working for Fritz. And at the time, they would run Amarillo and Lubbock every 2 weeks on a Sunday afternoon and evening. You would take those cheap $29 Southwest flights or whatever. You'd go out to Amarillo, Lubbock was in the afternoon. And then they would get Stooges with a van, or if you wanted to rent a car, and you'd drive to the other town that night, and then you could get the last flight out of there back to Dallas that night. So it was a long fucking day, right? But at the same time, the towns weren't drawing. West Texas did not draw for the Von Erichs back then. And houses are like, Amarillo might be 8 or 10 grand, and Lubbock might be 4 or 6 grand some days. It was ludicrous. So we wanted to get in and out of there as quick as we could. So we're in Lubbock one day, and it's afternoon, and it can't be the old Lubbock building that the Funks and all those, West Texas had success with all those years, because this was a newer kind of convention center type of place. It wasn't that big a building, maybe seat a couple thousand, as I recall, and they had ringside seats on the floor and then some bleachers, and it was nice, and also it was fucking only a quarter full. So the Midnight Express are having a match with the Fantastics, and whatever I did something. And it made this old woman in the front row mad. And at the time, the security railing consisted of you've seen them, Brian, at spot shows, and you're old enough, when they just had a rope tied to a pole, and the pole was stuck in a cement thing or whatever, and it sat there, and the rope ran down the length of the side of the ring and then around the 3 sides, and you had a walkway to enter into. Just a corner where the rope broke.
Right.
So it's a 3-foot high fucking rope, right? But that's supposed to be the security, the barrier for the fans. They can't come past that rope. Well, this old woman on the front row, she stands up and she's shaking her fist at me. And she can't be 5 feet tall, and her hair is snow white, and I can even see wrinkles without my glasses on. So it's one of those deals where if she wore long earrings, she'd look like a set of Venetian blinds, right? Give her a facelift, you'd have enough left to make a midget. She was wrinkled. And she's frail. And she's diminutive. And I pointed her like she's shaking her fist at me. And whatever I kept doing in this match, you could almost visibly see that this woman needed a walker, right, to get around. But she's standing there feebly. And so at least it's getting the people into it. And we do something else in the match. And I turned to look at her again, and she's getting more mad now and more worked up. You can kind of tell she's vibrating. And finally, the third time I look over to point at her and say, "What'd you think of that, Grandma?" I see her. She leans over, and she picks up. And in this building, they weren't metal folding chairs. These were those plastic, I don't know, prom chairs. You know what I'm talking about. The little, real, like that fucking idiot hit Eddie Edwards with the baseball bat in the face was using. It wasn't even a folding chair. It was a static plastic, like prom chair, almost like a lawn chair. She puts one hand on the back of it and one hand on the seat and picks it up. And she can barely get this like less than 2-pound plastic chair over her head, right? But she gets it up over her head, and I think she's going to throw it at me. And then no. She starts walking, and there's the break in the rope is right there where the aisleway where we came to the ring. So she just walks around the corner of the rope and is coming at me down the side of the ring with this fucking plastic chair over her head at one feeble step after another. And the people start noticing it. And I'm like, what the fuck? And they're starting to cheer. But now and I'm backed up against the ring, and I go, can I run from this? Certainly, and somebody's going to grab this woman, or the security's going to come. And nobody comes. So as she gets to me, she feebly, it looks like on Family Guy. You don't watch it, you fucking prick. But everybody else will know, the old pervert down the street. It looks like him moving slowly. And as she goes to hit me with this plastic chair that she has over her head, I just reach up and just stop the chair. And I didn't hit her. I didn't grab the chair away. I just stopped it. I just blocked it from her from hitting me with it. And it knocked her on her ass. Now the people are standing up, right? You motherfucker. Here comes security. Now I'm standing there with this chair now over the old woman is falling out from under the chair. So I'm holding this chair up over my head now. This woman is at my feet like Hulk smash. And I put the chair down and I roll in the ring like, what the fuck? And they come over and help this woman up. And as she gets up, she's shaking her fist at me, and they help her right back over as they get her chair and put it back in the same place. Apparently she did that quite a bit in that town. But I thought she was going to get me killed. Yes, sometimes these old women can be dangerous.
And they aren't there anymore. Whenever you watch old wrestling, you always see old people in the front row at the shows. And when was the last time you saw that?
Well, no, and that's because they had been coming for 30 and 40 years or more. So when's the last time anybody kept going to wrestling for 30 or 40 years?